Brian McClellan's latest book, In the Shadow of Lightning, the first book in the Glass Immortals, is out now. Go buy it right now.
This is Phantology.
You may have heard of us.
Hey everyone, it's Stephen from Phantology bringing you a review of Brian McClellan's latest book, In the Shadow of Lightning. This is the first book in his new trilogy called The Glass Immortals. It's been a couple of years since Brian finished his second trilogy of Powder Mage books, and I have been anxiously awaiting the release of the latest Brian McClellan, and I'm happy to say that it does not disappoint. This is a good book. Actually, this is a great book. This is a glassdamn great book. And you might have picked up that glass is important here. Glass is the central part of the new magic system. It's unique, it's exciting, there's great characters, there's an intricate plot, the pacing is fantastic. This is probably the thing that he's improved on the most. And really, I can't recommend this book enough. If you're a fan of fantasy, what are you waiting for? Go check out In the Shadow of Lightning. Okay, so what is it? I won't do any spoilers. This review will not contain spoilers. The book is coming out today at time of release. If you want to hear Brian's take on what his book is, check out our most recent podcast and YouTube video where we're talking with Brian and he gives a really nice breakdown. I'll try to summarize, but essentially what we have in the Shadow of Lightning is a story, a setting at least, that is pretty similar to what you've seen in the Powder Mage trilogy and universe. In those books, we have a flintlock fantasy military story in a pre-industrial setting, guns, magic, all kind of being combined in a fun and very fast-paced war story. In the Shadow of Lightning has a similar time period with its setting. It's a pre-industrial revolution, a lot of change going on, kind of an exciting time to live in. One of the biggest differences, however, is yes, there is a war, and that's a big part of the story, but it's not quite as much of a war story, and the pacing has slowed a little bit. There's a little more variety in the story that you're getting. The viewpoint characters are all kind of approaching the plot from a different set of eyes. And as a reader, it's really interesting to see the entirety of the plot from a bunch of different characters and then just kind of jump around from thing to thing. And this creates a really well woven together narrative that makes it always compelling. It's not always a breakneck speed like you're used to in the Powder Mage. The pacing is fast, don't get me wrong. Every chapter is kind of ending on like, oh, what's going to happen next type of thing. It's always exciting to read. So it's definitely a page turner. However, there's also a little more time to breathe. And personally, I really enjoyed that. I like Powder Mage quite a bit, but I do also like stories that are a little more of a slow burn. I wouldn't call this one a slow burn by any means, but there's more time to at least just kind of sit there, explore the world, sit there, learn about the characters a little bit more, feel comfortable with them, feel comfortable in the world, really kind of try to wrap your head around the intricacies of the plot. So I think, like I said before, the pacing really stand out, really fantastic. I was able to get an advanced copy of the book, and so I read it before most others. And a lot of the questions I got were around, what is this magic system? What can we expect in the Glass Immortals? So it's a little similar to Mistborn, where there are different types of glass, and the glass, depending on the type, depending on how it's made, has different powers. You can become stronger, smarter. You can just get a high. You can take your pain away. And there's several others. And depending on which glass you use, you usually kind of like thread it through an earring or wear it as jewelry, kind of the most common application of the glass, although there are some others that we see. Depending on which one you use, you develop those, you use those powers until the resonancy of the glass wears off. It's a little similar to Mistborn in that way, where depending on which metals you're burning, you have different powers. There's some different nuances in both, but I like the uniqueness of using glass and using it in kind of some different ways than what we've seen before. But it also is not too far-fetched where it seems like a realistic way. If glass were magical and there was magical sand that we could use to create glass, this seems like a realistic thing. And Brian has done a great job of weaving in this new magic system into things like the economy and the setting. And as you'll see, as you start reading, the glass has got something going on with it, and this is going to impact the economy. It's going to impact really all levels of society, because magic as you would expect, if there was magical power in the world, is really kind of king in a lot of elements of the world. So let me go through and give some ratings for individual aspects of the story. Setting. I'm going to give setting 8 out of 10. We don't see the entirety of the world here in the first book. In our conversation with Brian, it seems like he has a lot more developed here than what we've seen on page the first book. I'm assuming, and I think I'm right, based off of some things that happen towards the end of the book, which I will obviously not spoil, but I think we're going to see more and more of the world, that the map will be opened up to us. He kind of did the same thing, actually, in Powder Mage, where the first conflicts were a little more localized, and then eventually we got more and more, and then the second trilogy was in a different continent. I don't know how much exploration of the rest of the map to expect, but I do believe that we will see more of the setting. What we saw so far, though, is not a slouch by any means. This is, like I said, the setting does a great job of tying together the magic into all levels of society. The pre-industrial type setting is right. It feels right. As you read from page to page, you're like, yeah, this feels, it feels realistic. Feels like there's been a lot of time put into making sure that everything kind of checks out the right way and feels like you would expect. It feels realistic, feels like you're kind of at home in the world pretty easily. By the way, if you are listening, you might want to check out the map. I'm sure it will be available online somewhere. I didn't have the final copy of the version one of the book when I started reading, and so I was a little confused on where places were. And then the actual hardcover arrived from Tor, thank you, and that had the map in it, and then I was able to go back, and that was very helpful. So if you are listening, you probably want to locate a map, and that's going to be helpful. The only thing I'll say negative against the setting is, while I thought the magic was really cool, I feel like there's potential for a lot more uses here than what we actually saw. And it's very possible that this is strategic and he's kind of holding back some uses, like Sanderson did in Mistborn, where every book kind of had like another layer of the magic added to it. That makes it fun, exciting to get the next installment where they're doing new cool things. That's kind of what I expect to see here, because there is a lot of cool magic, but at the same time, I'm thinking like, okay, if we can do all these different types of magic with glass, there should be more. And so that's one thing that I'm most looking forward to, and that I'd really like to see in the rest of the trilogy. Characters also gets an 8 out of 10. There's 4 main point of view characters. We have Demir, Tessa, Adrian, and Kizzy. And that, like I said, they're all approaching the conflict from a different angle. They all have really unique voices, complex backstories. They're really, everything you'd want in characters. I think his characters here are better than what he's done in previous books as well. Really solid standout characters. My favorite's Demir. Actually, no, my favorite is Tessa. They're close. And I have to go with Tessa because I told Brian in our conversation that my favorite is Tessa, so I'm sticking with that. My least favorite was Adrian. I feel like maybe his backstory wasn't quite as fleshed out, and so there's more opportunity to do that in future books. And another really cool thing that Brian does well in this book is his side characters are really good. There's characters like Baby Montego and Brennan, the concierge hotel guy that you'll meet. I think that's his name, Brennan. I might have that wrong. Brennan, maybe. Anyway, both of these guys are really well fleshed out, and these are side characters. And a lot of times in our reviews of books, we say, oh, the main characters are great, but the side characters were just, we're a little vanilla. Not so here in The Shadow of Lightning. So that was well done. Plot, I'm going to go 8, nope, not 8, 9. 9 out of 10. I think this plot was fantastic. I was very interested in the plot all the way through. Brian does a great job of weaving together this complex tale that has a lot of different kind of intricate plot lines that all tie in. You don't understand how everything ties in until he wants you to, and I think they're done in the correct places. It's a good tale of war, romance, intrigue, magic, friendship, etc. Lots of fun themes, lots of hard-hitting themes, really good balance of humor versus some serious moments. So really masterfully done. And it never felt like it was too big for one book. I think sometimes I get into stories that are, maybe there's just the author's bit off a little more than you can chew to fit into one book. Didn't feel like that. Felt like the appropriate amount of things for one book, but it also didn't feel too small for one book, where you're just kind of doing the same things over and over again, or you're just like sitting around plotting out the heist type of thing. No, not so. So 9 out of 10, very solid on the plot. So with the plot, there were a couple of quibbles that I have, and that's why, I've said a lot of positive things, but I haven't given it 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10 is just kind of hard to earn in general, but a couple of things here. So I maybe would have structured it a little bit differently, and you'll see when you start reading it. But I felt like it takes a while to see the cool magic things. So it took me about 40% of the book before I was like, this book is awesome. I'm just going to power through the rest of it because I can't put it down. It took about 40% of the way through. And I think part of the reason was I was reading it and seeing some magic things, but I was still a little confused. I was like, there's these glass dancers, they can do awesome things. Why am I not seeing more of the awesome things? And it took a bit to get into that. And instead, the beginning of the book is really focused on character things and setting up what's going to pay off later in the book. And they do. They're great payoffs. And so I understand why it had to happen that way. I just feel like it maybe would have been a slightly stronger book if we started off with a really cool magical moment, so that in the back of the reader's head, you're always thinking, okay, this is what's possible with the magic. This is cool. This is what I can expect. When can I see more of it? But it's that was, I think, just a plotting decision that was made, and pros and cons. So I would just maybe knock it down 1 point, but that is a preference thing. I don't think there's any real like technical reason to say that was wrong or anything. That just my preference of how I would have maybe enjoyed the story a little more. Pacing, I'm going 9 out of 10 as well. And again, the reason why it's not 10 out of 10, I think, is because the pacing, it just the story took a little bit to get into. Through the first 40%, like I said, just a little bit, a lot of setup. Not so much where it was too slow and boring, not at all, but I just feel like it could have been maybe a little stronger if there was more exciting stuff at the beginning. So that's why I say 9 instead of 10, but both ratings are obviously awesome because the pacing was really good throughout. I never felt like, how some books at the end of the chapter, there's just kind of like some weird cliffhanger, some contrived thing, or they're about to have the big conversation, but they can't because someone comes in and they're pregnant, or something weird like that. And we never had any contrived things like that. The story was obviously plotted out and paced really well throughout. So 9 out of 10, masterful job. Prose, 8 out of 10. Good rating. I don't think that Brian tries to be too flowery with any of his prose. It's it's very comparable to Sanderson, where it's very utilitarian. It's designed for the reader to be able to read and understand and continue to enjoy the story at a fast pace, right? So does it achieve what it's trying to do? Yes, absolutely. For that, if you're just going off that, 10 out of 10. Sometimes I like a little more flowery, kind of beautiful writing to be interspersed throughout the story. So maybe I would have liked it a little more with Roth's style of prose every now and then. Doesn't need to have that all the time, because I think with like Erickson's Malazan, you get a little too much. Sometimes it's maybe trying a little too hard, so it just slows down the reading process. So striking that balance is how I would really prefer stories to go. This is much more just on the clear glass pane that Sanderson talks about, where he wants the reader to be able to very easily understand the story, and for that purpose solely does a great job. So obviously I'm very high on this book. I really enjoyed In the Shadow of Lightning, and I really enjoyed our conversation with Brian, so check that out. If you haven't bought the book yet, do it now. It's on sale. It's available. There's a lot of copies in your local bookstore. Go grab one, because I can guarantee if you found our channel and are watching this review, you're going to like the book. Like, this is a book that I think people would be very excited about and are going to be very excited to see the rest of the series. Sometimes I have to force my way through some of the books that we review, and we try to be positive. I am very genuinely excited for people to read this. I want to hear opinions. I'm really excited to see which character of the 4 main point of views, which character is the favorite. So I think after a week or so has passed, people have read the story, we'll put up a poll there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. All right, Glass Dancers, go read the book. Have a glass damn good time doing it.